I think it's important to remember that Washington, Saudi, and the UAE do not believe for a second that what took place in Sudan was a revolution. As far as these states are concerned, al-Bashir's government fell as a result of a sustained campaign of sanctions that lasted 3 decades and forced the people to choose between al-Bashir and economic relief. The reason this is relevant is because it directly answers the question as to why Washington, Saudi, and the UAE and the civilian parties of the Forces for Freedom and Change are adamant that there should be an extended transition period, and why they believe that the democratic transition in Sudan should be delayed for as long as possible. For Washington, Saudi, the UAE, and the civilian parties of the Forces for Freedom and Change, it is deeply problematic to allow the Sudanese people to dictate the terms of their democratic transition. They believe that if the Sudanese people are allowed to vote in elections and allowed to hold a referendum, then the civilian parties preferred by Washington, UAE, and Saudi would be relegated to the sidelines, and the ideological changes to the state that Washington imposed 30 years of sanctions to bring about would be jeopardized. An elected government by the Sudanese would never have normalized ties with Israel as Burhan did and end decades of unrelenting support for Palestinian resistance. A referendum by the Sudanese would never approve this draft constitution that has been proposed by the civilian FFC and backed by Washington, Saudi, and the UAE. This constitution that erases all mention and reference to Islam, that erases Arabic as the state's official language, and that makes no reference to Allah even in its preamble. This is why Sudan's transition period has been so ugly. It's because there is a clear consensus among the wrestling parties and international brokers that a democratic transition must not be allowed to take place at the moment. And this is what has allowed the unelected Forces for Freedom and Change to push demands that it knows it would never be able to secure a popular mandate for. It is also the reason why Sudanese took to the streets last weekend to denounce this draft constitution and demand elections, and why the civilian FFC has lost significant popular support as it becomes abundantly clear that their aim is not a democratic transition, but a coup of their own.